Hey guys, this is Chauncey from Session Stories, and today we're welcoming back New York singer, songwriter, and pianist Damon Smith. When we first spoke, Damon was still teasing singles from Spectator, a record described as carnival rock and doom ballads. Now with the album finally here, it's like stepping inside an eerily beautiful world where classical arrangements, haunted melodies, and existential storytelling collide. From grief to control to escapism, Spectator feels like a cautionary tale for adults, and we're super stoked to have him here, so welcome.
Thank you. I like that description.
So yeah, I was super excited. I've been re-listening to this album a lot. So obviously the album's called Spectator, and then you open with the voice inside my head. So where this voice is basically telling you how to live, to start a family, build an empire, grow at lightning speed. It almost feels like the spectators already living inside your own head. So I'm just curious, what's the meaning behind the title Spectator, and did any of the songs gradually lead you there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So pretty much every one of the songs has some form of my version of a spectator, which is just somebody just watching something unfold that they can't really control or be part of. Sort of like if you're an audience member in the show, you're watching it unfold and the events just happen in front of you. And every one of the songs has some sort of version of that. So yeah, and that one, it's kind of like the voice of I guess the voice of sort of like late capitalism, basically, that we all sort of wake up with, I think, or at least I can definitely relate to waking up with that. Just that relentless loop, begging for more productivity and leveling up and whatever values are just constantly broadcasted towards us. And yeah, I wrote that one when I was, 17, so it was sort of like more of an
17.
So it was more of like an angsty time as well. So I was listening to a lot of Pink Floyd. I think it's sort of one of the most sort of direct songs in terms of the meaning. But yeah, so the album starts with the narrator sort of waking up, and then it closes with the narrator falling asleep, and then the last song is like a dream, and then it kind of restarts again if you listen to it on a loop. I kind of like to let people discover these things on their own. But I just gave that my interpretation away.
I actually wrote that in the question, so it's a good thing I'm on the right path. Okay.
I kind of wanted to get away from sort of the more like postmodern connotation of the spectator. I think we've all been a little bit exhausted by that. Like there's like the Society of the Spectacle, Guide to Board, and like Baudrillard and simulacrum and all these concepts that were kind of fed in school, which are very relevant. And there's a certain point where I feel like it just becomes too depressing. And so I sort of wanted to bring it back to this concept of like the spectator before all of that stuff happened. And it's more about like feeling like you're an outsider or watching like a relationship sort of fall apart, or, just sitting at home and watching events unfold. I wanted to sort of take it more like to a storybook level than I think we all got a little exhausted with just all these postmodern terms and forces, which are unfortunately still guiding our everyday actions. But I wanted to take it back to like, if I played that album for a kid, maybe they could understand it without having read,
Exactly.
Society, the Spectacle, or any of these books.
Yeah. And I mentioned this in the intro, but definitely listening from front to back to Spectator, it definitely, I don't know why, but I just kept coming back to the idea of like a cautionary. I think they have cautionary tales for children, but I feel like this album is like a cautionary tale for adults. There's ambition, there's grief, there's addiction, there's escapism. So was there anything during that chapter of your life that kept pulling these heavier themes like back into the songs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do love cautionary tales. I think a lot of my songs are cautionary tales, maybe too many. The first song that opens the album I wrote when I was 17, and the songs span from all over my late teenage years into my early 20s, and then some even in my later 20s. So, I personally went through a lot of changes there and ups and downs with mental health and trying to survive as a musician, and just making, and also like talking about making all these different forces the guiding force, and how that can be very detrimental too. like going back to the first song, Voice Inside My Head, where like this kind of productivity mindset, or kind of like hierarchical thinking with people too. That was something I was really struggling with throughout, was having like horizontal relationships with people where we could just be friends or be on the same page. And there was always this kind of like hierarchy that I was imposing on every situation and relationship. And I think that sort of speaks to the theme of the album too, where the spectator's like down in the audience, and then there's like the showrunner on the stage, and sort of feeling like I would switch between these two, but never just be on like
The same
one
wavelength.
level. Yeah, same wavelength with people, places, and things. So
And I know you've described the songs as like carnival rock and doom ballads, which honestly feels like the perfect description for this record. But what is it about that unsettling, almost like Tim Burton-esque, strange carnival-like world that interests you creatively?
I think I've always been drawn to dark Gothic things. I don't know if I talked about this in the last one, but when I was like, my first memory ever was I couldn't sleep, and I was whining or something, and my dad took me out into the living room, and it was during Halloween. It was like the week before Halloween, and I was really young, and there was horror movies just playing all night, and so I think that was pretty formative for me. I think it was like an American Werewolf in London, which the imagery really stuck with me, and so I've always been really drawn to dark Gothic things. When it's Halloween, I watch a horror movie pretty much every night of that month, which is probably not the best for mental health, but it kind of helps somehow. I don't know. And there's some people talking about how that can be helpful in some way.
I fall asleep to horror movies, so it's not that strange.
There we go. Yeah, there's something comforting about them, and that sort of also goes back to like the spectator thing, being the spectator. And literature too. I mean, when I was a kid, I read all the Goosebumps books, and like all the R.L. Stein, the Stephen King stuff. I think in another world, I would maybe be trying to be like a low-budget horror film director, but that's not what's going on. So I get as close as I can with the music. So I grew up in New York City, and there is kind of this like dark Gothic feeling. Like I relate to that vision of the city. Everyone sort of has their own artistic interpretation of it. And like as a kid, I watched this show, the Batman the Animated Series, which has really amazing dark deco imagery, which is like Gothic and Art Deco combined. That's like my favorite thing, and I don't think it's really been represented in music. So I'm trying to sort of bring that aesthetic to my music. And so so when I've lived in the city for over 2 decades, and I see it through that lens, and so I sort of also try to bring that dark vision of New York City into.
Yeah. I don't know if you read the books as a child, but I read the series of Unfortunate Events. I think those came out like in middle school, and then they did the movie adaptation, but the one with Jim Carrey, and the set for that is absolutely amazing. And I kept thinking, when I was listening to your album today, I kept thinking of that series, because I feel like your music would fit in perfectly, because it's like this like beautiful, pristine scenery, but something about it feels like a bit off kilter and a bit uneasy, but it's still like very pleasing to the eye. But yeah, I thought about your album.
Yeah, that's so funny. That was a very formative series for me, for sure. I remember I listened to the 5th book, I think, where the kids go to the school.
Yeah.
On audiobook in a car ride on the way home. My parents just put it on. I think, towards the end they were like, "What have we done?" But yeah, the book ends with like the 2 of the kids getting kidnapped and taken away, and I just remember that kind of like rocking my world a little bit. And then I read all the books after that, and also I think I was in about 4th grade when that movie came out, and it was part of like the Lunchables advertising, and I had Lunchables every now and then. So yeah, I think that definitely influenced me a lot as well.
Yeah. And what I love about your music is that it's constantly balancing like beauty and dread. There seems to hold both an equilibrium at the same time, and somehow it works so harmoniously. So how do you manage that balance?
Wow, that's a really nice description. I never thought about it like that, but yeah, I think that I've just realized that is kind of one of my aims. It's a lot to do with the harmony, honestly, like the chord progressions and Yeah, I've been thinking about this recently. If I write a song, like I have to write a melody that I believe is worthy of being brought into the world. And sometimes I've even gotten to the point where I sort of judge other songwriters for this because which maybe is not the best, but I'm like, there's been so many melodies and so many chord progressions written. If I'm gonna bring something into this world, like it better be worthy, you know. So I write tons of melodies and tons of ideas, and I only really pick the ones that I believe just bring something unique to the table and sound new. And so that's honestly one of like my main goals, I think, with my songwriting is to do that. And so, yeah, sometimes when I go into a show with that mindset, it ruins some other acts for me because I do believe a lot of people do not value that as much, and that's fine. That's not to say their
Yeah.
music is better or worse, but that's just so important to me. So,
Yeah, yeah. And there's this reoccurring idea across the album of like escapism, whether it's make pretend or apocalyptic days, or even characters who'd rather look away than confront what's happening. So, do you think Spectator is partly about the stories we tell ourselves to survive?
yeah, I do. I definitely do. I mean, the escapism is definitely a big part of the whole tapestry.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, pretty much every song I think gets into some form. I mean, that's just always been my coping mechanism.
yeah,
So with reality, and I've always had this desire to like transcend into some sort of different realm, not reality. I think that goes back to like the storybook stuff, and that can manifest in many ways in our reality, you know, but where people seek escapism through entertainment or, you know, substance use or, you know, other people sometimes, like making someone else, you know, their guiding force. And I can relate to all of these routes, honestly. And so I've been, as someone who's sort of basically tried every route of escapism in our current reality, I think that manifests in the songs themselves. So each song could be viewed as sort of like, you know, a different example of the narrator looking for some sort of escape from our current situation.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if we talked about it last time, but I love Tightrope because of the instrumentation genuinely makes it feel like you're on the tightrope. There's like the finger pluck strings and there's like the staccato arrangements and there's this dizzying sense of like unease and the music is balancing on edge. So when writing songs like that, are you seeing these roles visually as you compose, or does imagery reveal itself through the music?
Totally, yeah. So I think it's more actually the latter. So it starts with me having that goal of writing some sort of chord progression or melody that feels like it's bringing something new to the table.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the melody is always sort of the guiding force for everything because I love word painting, and so you know I wrote this melody. I actually Tightrope was inspired by "Morning Bell" by Radiohead because
Ah,
there's this one chord change in the first two chords of "Morning Bell." If you listen to it, you'll be like, "Oh, that's the same change as Tightrope." And I was like, I think they could take this a bit further, you know? So I took that change and then I did it again and I did it again and then I came to the key and did it again and again. So that's where it started. But then it started to reveal itself as like, yeah, the sort of highs and lows, which there's a few of my songs like that.
yeah.
And I love word painting so much. There's so many songs that I think I love where I don't even realize it's happening, you know? Yeah, I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, like where he goes, "When are you gonna come down?" And he like it slides down, you know, it's
Yeah.
stuff like that
Love
that
that.
really makes me happy when it happens. So I think I'm always trying to do that. But yeah, it starts with the melody, that's the guiding force, and then it sort of dictates, I think, what the lyrics will be.
Yeah. And I definitely know we've already talked about this, but I mean, like for new listeners, but Poison Mind, the first time I heard it I like broke down. I loved it so much. And I also resonate a lot with that song. Like the song, most of the song is about like isolation and maybe like being like wired differently. And then right at the end, you give us, I won't let you get left behind. So why was that important to leave the listener with that line?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know if I talked about this last time, but originally that line wasn't there. It was just kind of like dark. And a couple of people had actually told me to consider changing the lyrics to that song because it was just too bleak.
Love it.
But really But really, like, that was the point of the song, and I even added some backup vocals where you can hear me saying, "I won't let you get left behind" in the background earlier on in the song to just like, "Don't worry, there is some sort of light at the end of the tunnel here." But yeah, it's just sort of about, when you do hit a bottom or when you get to that darkest place, you actually have a unique utility to help other people by having gone to that space. So if they enter, if they end up reaching a similar place, you can relate to them on a unique level. And I've been in that, I've been in that situation before where I've been able to be helpful to someone who has gone to a low point that I can relate to. And so that's the point of the song. It's not just, even though I can really relate, I can still, at times relate to those lyrics and whatever chronic uniqueness or whatever people call it. I think the point of that song is that you're not really unique, or we're not really unique, and all of those experiences that we've had where we feel like we're at our lowest points, other people have had similar experiences, and yeah, you can be uniquely helpful to someone who's had that experience or is going through that after. And I've had that experience in my life, and it's one of the most beautiful things. So
Yeah.
it's a very uplifting, positive song overall.
You get to the end and you're like, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And as a classically trained pianist, like, I mean, clearly you understand restraint. So like knowing when the piano should lead and when it should just kind of like haunt the edges of a song. So on Spectator, did you find yourself thinking more like a pianist or more like a producer?
It's kind of both. I don't know. So I mean, the album was sort of made during this time when I had started posting more on social media and having some success from that. And that's also sort of this aspect of like the Spectator title, because I never really had any eyes on me playing music before, and then suddenly there were more eyes on that, and that was kind of an interesting experience, which also has its own ups and downs.
Yeah.
But I do think, yeah, I approached a lot of it from like, I do videos where I'm just playing piano and singing, and so I approached a lot of the songs like that. But also my producer Griffin Jennings, we've been writing songs together since, I think I was 13 or 14, and so like for like 16 years, and we've been sort of slowly growing like our own, producer songwriter connection and developing, I think, our own language and voice with that. So this album was sort of like a culmination of that as well. Just like we've been doing this for a long time. If you listen to our band called the Jacobins, you can actually hear the Carnival sound being developed very early on, the Carnival rock back in 2010 maybe. So and I think that stuff is really good, but I think we've refined it. We've refined it in a way, and it's been a beautiful thing to like build that relationship, and then also sort of make the image more HD.
Yeah, and I think the last time we talked, you were maybe flirting with the idea of learning the guitar. And then this is the first time I heard this track a few days ago, but then on a track like Resolution, you really lean into more like a guitar forward, almost like folk leaning instrumentation, like there's with the harmonica and the acoustic texture. So what drew you towards that sonic palette on this particular song?
By the way, that guitar solo is played by Griffin, my producer. He's an amazing guitarist as well. He was playing with my band at the release show as well. And yeah, I think I was listening to a bunch of Alex G at the time. I'm actually wearing an Alex G
Nice.
t-shirt right now. That was like right when, just to give you a picture on like how long we've been working on the album, that was right when God Save the Animals came out. And so Griffin and I had been listening to that song Runner a lot, which is a really good song and kind of folky, but also has piano elements. And it did really come back to this thing of like, how can we make this more interesting? Because that song changes key 3 times just during the verse and then goes back. So there's definitely some word painting there. I mean, it's about sort of dealing with the ups and downs of having a close friend who's an addict. So the chord progressions are like going all over the place, but then sort of returning. And yeah, Griffin is in a couple bands that are more like folk pop, sort of even like pavement-y kind of feeling. And so I think he kind of brought his own voice to that as well. He's a guitarist, he doesn't play piano. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, it was nice because it was a change of pace from the previous song. So it was a nice addition to the track list. And then a bit of a fun question. If Spectator is this carnival of doom, hope, beauty, and chaos, what role do you play inside of it? Are you the ringmaster, the fortune teller, the tightrope walker, or are you the guy quietly running the whole thing behind the curtain?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I think the answer to that is kind of all of them, and so it's that yeah. So throughout the album, the narrator or the the character, the MC, is sort of going through all these different perspectives, and yeah, it's really about that the thing we were talking about earlier, like the up and down, like which
Yeah,
one am I? Am I the person controlling, or am I the person being controlled? And so like at the end of the album, before Pelican Sky, before like the dream song,
yeah,
they're sort of falling asleep, and actually there's like I don't think anyone caught this maybe, but who knows? But there's like a voice that says "go to sleep" really deeply in the outro, Spectator outro, which is a little spooky. So it's sort of like falling asleep again, still stuck in that loop of like which one am I? Where I think like the solution is like we're not the showrunners whatsoever, but we still try to be, and I still try to be. And so yeah, so that's sort of like fluctuating between all these different distance between spectator and showrunner.
yeah, yeah. I actually I like wrote down the notes to all your lyrics today just so I could like go back and reread them. And that was the one song where like I could hear it partially, but I couldn't hear the ending part. So now I'm happy you're saying it's gonna say it's like what is he saying?
Yeah, it says go to sleep. It's kind of scary.
Also, not to backtrack, but at the end of Poison Mind, what I really like is that right at the end, it feels like you're almost in this trance dreamlike state because once the vocals stop, then it's almost like you hear it feels like an old silent like black and white film, but the voices are a bit muddled in the way that they come through. And I thought it was like such a beautiful way to end that song because you're talking about a kind of disheveled all over the place mind, and then you have this kind of dreamlike weaved in story at the end. But like what was that like actually a movie or something playing at the end?
Oh yeah, so I'm glad you picked up on that. So that was, to me, there's like this comforting melody going on, right? And then at the same time there's people laughing, and so that's sort of just like the whole track sort of combined, like the concept of the whole track, where there's this one element where you really feel like everything's pressing against you and you're different from everyone. But then there's sort of like one hand reaching out to sort of be. So that's sort of I thought that was a nice concise outro because it puts both of those elements together. So that to me the melody is like sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, but then you still sort of hear like the echoes of because you can never really escape
Yeah.
that. You can only sort of seek relief from it, usually from like getting out of your own self and helping someone else. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And now that the album's out in the world, what's on the docket for you for 2026? So, do you have any more shows coming up? I mean, I don't want to assume music already, but are you already working on new stuff, or what's the plan?
Yeah, well, I do. I actually, luckily, have an entire finished album with my band, the Brightmares. So
Yeah, your brother, right?
yeah, with my brother. So, and he's actually on Spectator a lot as well. But yeah, we have a full finished album. We got it mastered a couple weeks back, and
Okay.
so that's done. Singles will be coming out soon. I think it's really really good. And I'm doing this Paul McCartney Ram tribute show in July, which I'm excited about. It's going to be probably pretty difficult to pull off, but we got we'll have some guest singers, and so yeah, and then I'm just probably gonna get back to the piano and start writing my next project too.
Yeah. And have you progressed at all with learning the guitar, or is that
Actually, I've gotten better, but it's so slow. It's so
yeah.
slow. It's hard to like leave E major territory,
Yeah.
but I do think I've gotten better. Yeah, maybe that's also part of my next project. It's really, I do think people just love the guitar. I think there's an imbalance. I think piano needs more love. I've been trying, but it's kind of an uphill battle.
But yeah, I think those were the main questions I had for you. But are there any final words that you would like to leave for your fans and the listeners?
If you listen to this album, I suggest listening to the whole thing and I think it's perfect for taking a walk through the park right when the sun is setting and like the lamp lights are flickering on slowly. And so that would be my suggestion. But really, I think it works in any scenario, and I hope you listen.